Welcome to Hyper Live, and today we've got our special guest Olly Brand, from CTO from Collecting Cars. Welcome, Olly. And co-host today is Daniel. So maybe I'll pass over to Daniel, and then we can get into things.
Hey everyone. Yes, Daniel, founder of Great CTO, and work closely with the Hyper team as well. And some housekeeping. So this is a pre-recorded segment, so there'll be no questions until the end when we live premiere this. So yeah, how are you doing, Olly?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks both for having me.
Well, thank you for making the time, and yeah, looking forward to hearing about what you've been up to. Sounds like some pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's been good.
So, Olly, I understand we've been having a bit of a theme recently and talking about AI-assisted software development, and your team have had some recent experiences with it. But maybe set the scene for us first. So, what had you been doing previously, and yeah, what have you done recently?
Yeah, sure. So we're an online auction platform for premium cars and watches. So collectingcars.com and watchcollecting.com. We're primarily Next.js, JavaScript, Node, and PHP. And we had a significant challenge, and we were stuck on version 7.3 of PHP 8. I can confess that now because we're no longer on it. Obviously, that possessed quite a large risk in terms of an exploit being discovered in it because it's no longer patched and no longer supported. And obviously, it's not the most relaxing position to be in as a CTO when you've got that much of a drop or difference between versions hanging over you. So we first tried to address this in 2023. We had 4 developers working on it, and we got really close, but we just didn't have enough time. We couldn't sell it to the business as enough of a priority, and we had to focus on some additional work. We had to down tools and park it. However, since then, we've been playing with Copilot, and that led us on to then Cursor and the might of Claude 3.7. And this time around, when we went to upgrade from PHP 7.3 to 8.3, we basically could use Claude to do 80% of the work and pair it with our principal engineer, and he was able to do it in 4 weeks. So instead of 4 developers doing it in 6 weeks and only getting about 4 weeks into it, and then failing, we had 1 developer manage to do it all on their own.
Yeah, amazing. Could you share a little bit more about the the architecture or the complexity or the style of the application itself, just to give people a little bit of context there, and then we could maybe dig into what was different.
Certainly. So it's a bit of a hybrid monolith. So we've got a few microservices that are done in Node.js, and it's a very well-structured monolith with good decoupling and several other components that are part of the build. They're all in PHP for the backend elements, or in our API, sorry. And that essentially was in 7.3. And then we have some front-end components that are also 7.3 PHP, React, and then Next.js as well. So it's quite a complex landscape for not that many developers. We're a team of 7. So it's quite a challenge to get to a point where we could have the code base stable enough to make a significantly long change, or have the priority to be able to do this.
Yeah, it's certainly a very common problem, I think, in Australia and New Zealand as well. We have a program that we've run with over 200 software product companies, and I'd say a reasonable proportion of them are struggling with a very similar problem, and obviously different languages, but obviously this is something that's pretty widely applicable.
And it is challenging as well, because you've got, if it's 7.3 to 7.4, I don't think it would have been such an issue, but 7.3 to 8, or 7 to 8 was a huge transition in PHP land. So there's a lot of libraries, a lot of dependencies, and obviously you can't just do a part of it because you need to have the whole entire state updated at the same time. There were dependencies across libraries. Having said things were decoupled, we did have a few. There was gotchas around every corner. So the fact that AI was able to do this in less time and efficiently, we have automated testing, so we're able to do all of that proofing, and we also put our principal engineer on it, so we didn't entrust this to a junior and let them send it events. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that the amount of leverage you get generally tends to depend on the experience of the developer, because the garbage in, garbage out is exactly what you don't want. And our very experienced principal engineer, Matt, was able to leverage AI fully on this. And to his credit, 80% is an incredible stat.
And so tell us a little bit more about the layered testing that you had around the application, because I think that sounds like a pretty important aspect of this.
Yeah, sure. So we have Cypress testing for end-to-end testing, and then we have unit testing inside all of our builds, inside of all of our dependencies as well. So we can, at every different stage, build and test the application to make sure we're not introducing a breaking change. So part of this was also to update those tests, which is quite terrifying and scary, because you can imagine there would have been some changes, there would have been things we needed to test. And that's where Matt's experience as principal engineer really came in, because he was able to know through the sense of being a principal engineer and the force that brings of which tests he could safely change, what was a safe change, where was the risk, where might you need to add an additional test. And that gave us the confidence then to move forward.
And obviously, Matt knows the code base very well, I guess, as well. So that's a big factor here.
Huge. Yeah, he's one of the original engineers that built it. So his IP is second to none.
Yep. Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about the process then. So, why did you try this path? Or, it sounds like that sort of, you wanted to get this work done. That was the kind of main driver. But what led you to experiment with Claude, and how did you tackle this thing?
So as I kind of said, if we go right back to Copilot, we have GitHub and we had a Microsoft license. So the trial was an obvious thing to do. We started with the autocompletes and we're like, it's second guessing us. This is magic. This is voodoo. And then a couple of teams said, can we try Cursor? And I'm like, absolutely. Let's just make sure we do it safely. Let's make sure we're protecting our IP. Let's make sure we're doing this right. So we did a pilot with a couple of engineers. They came back saying this is just leagues ahead of Copilot. This, I can have a discussion with this about the code. I can set rules up front. I can give it our coding style. I can have the entire context of a code base. So we laid all the groundwork with those experimentations first. And then Matt actually built a prototype of a new product, fully using the app. He reckons about 70% of the code from that Claude wrote and 30% he wrote. And he then put it to us as a team, hey, I think I can have a go at doing the PHP 8 upgrade on my own with Claude. Shall I have a go? So we said, brave, okay, let's try it. Let's see how far you can get, keep us posted. So it started with, I think, maybe I can do it in a couple of months, maybe. And then, yeah, Matt turned it around in a couple of weeks, had a working version and was really just ironing out bugs and working through it.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that's quite a turnaround compared to your early attempts. I remember the migration from PHP 4 to 5. What was actually involved in the detail from 7.3 to 8? Like, what was changing?
I don't actually know PHP, but I can give you the rundown. Is that basically every single dependency and every single library that existed, so all external libraries had to be updated. Anything effectively had to be, everything effectively had to be updated. So we couldn't trust anything, and that therefore we had to run full end-to-end testing. Every line of code effectively had to be touched, changed, all import statements, every single thing, then dependency checked. End-to-end testing of absolutely everything to make sure nothing's broken. And then we have a staging environment, which obviously released everything to first. We then cleared the rest of the team out for a week and said, right, priority is testing this in staging. And we generally didn't find any bugs. We spent a week trying all we've got involving the business, and we didn't hit a single issue or bug, which I think had we done it manually with 4 engineers, I think the chance of a human error in there would have been significant. I think worth stating that obviously PHP 7.3 to PHP 8 is a very structured thing, and it had the entire context of our code base. So it's not like we were saying to it, off you go and add this new wonderful feature, or here's a JIRA with a limited amount of context from a product person, they'll go and make it. There's a huge amount of structure in the code itself, and then there's obviously a huge amount of structure in the upgrade path and the context and awareness that it's had before that. But I think it's, it was still, I was stunned that Matt was able to turn it around in the time he did, and then also further stunned and very appreciative of the fact that it was done without error and seamlessly.
As the CTO, how did you think about the risks associated with the decisions around introducing first Copilot and then later sort of Cursor?
Being a dyslexic, I hit ChatGPT pretty early and was just blown away by how it could take the nonsense that I tend to write and convert into meaningful English in a far more efficient time than I can. Whereas it might take me an hour to write an email, I can usually knock out the bare bones in about 5 minutes and then spend the rest of the 55 minutes converting it from Ollyglish to English. And ChatGPT could just do that for me straight away. So I was quite quick on the adoption of Copilot and bringing that back to the team. And that was managed within our enterprise license. So I knew that none of our IP or our code would be going up to Microsoft servers or anything. I was quite convinced and sorted on all of that. Then having seen it in action and having seen it rolled out across the team, we just got an instant 20% boost in productivity. Skeptics were just completely turned around. Everyone was moving. We had it working on IntelliJ, what were they called? So I'm having a mental block on last minute of the day. What are they called?
WebStorm.
Yes, WebStorm. Yes, so we're having it running on WebStorm and we're having it run it in VS Code, which is what I choose and use. And it was brilliant. It was working alongside our developers. Everyone was feeling the boost. And I say people then just wanted to explore Cursor. And I thought, well, this has meant so much to me. This has brought so much in. So I checked Cursor's terms and conditions, realized it would be completely safe for us to do. Tried it with 2 of them to say, away you go, please be careful, report back. And yeah, they did. They ran a pilot for 2 months. And at the end of the 2 months, we're like, you will have to switch to this. This is incredible. And then we moved everyone across to an enterprise license to ensure that we weren't risking any leaking. The other thing we have is we also have a Google contract. So we have Gemini Pro 2.5. And actually, Gemini Pro 2.5 is a bit of a step up on Claude 3.7. And that's fully ring fenced. So nothing's getting out from that. So it's worth bearing in mind. It's worth doing your own checks and taking it to a level you're comfortable with. I think your question's very much on the money. If you're doing something that's effectively sharing all you're doing with the public, and if you've got any form of API key or anything else like that in there or involved, I would think very carefully and be very aware of what you're doing and what you're giving permissions to.
With the pilot, did you select the 2 people that ran the pilot, or did they volunteer? How did that work?
They volunteered. So we got to a point where everyone was using Copilot and people were happy. And because of the success of Copilot, people were then looking at other ways they could use AI. And I've been positively promoting that to the team. So we've used it for generative AI. People use it for writing documents. We've got Atlassian, so we've got Confluence, which has it in as well, which does summaries. We've got Google providing summaries for meetings, all the doc tools, all the suites there. Gemini's great. So I said, if there's something you want to do, please bring it in. And 2 of them independently said, actually, I've had a go with Cursor in my own time. Could you give me Cursor Pro? So it was an easy sell to finance. Say, well, look, we got 20% for the licensing for Copilot. We think we can increase that further by going for Cursor. So let's trial it for 2 months and report back.
And so how long were the team using these kinds of tools before you sort of tackled the migration work?
About 4 months using Cursor and about 18 months of using Copilot.
Yeah, cool. So quite a bit of experience under their belts.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to that point of the most senior, experienced person doing it. So they're going to get the most leverage and be also the safest to use to do it, for want of a better way of describing it.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a few organizations where there's a nervousness around adopting these tools. And I think people were, and possibly the large organizations, including some I know of where executives are mandating, not now, we're not ready. What would you say to those organizations? What are they missing out on?
Unlucky, a lot. I get the nervousness, and I think it's a privilege that I'm able to choose in a position where I can say, yes, we can use that. But I think it's twofold. You're not giving your employees the opportunity to experience and grow their skills of working with it. And then you're also missing out the productivity gains that go hand in hand with that as your employees develop with it, because it is a skill. It's very much like remote working. Remote working itself is a skill. So you can't just one day decide I'm going to go and remote work. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes an awareness. And it's very similar with AI. It very much augments you. We haven't gone as far as agentic yet. So that example I gave with the Jira ticket is loosely specified. We're not quite so interested in that at the moment. I'm sure that will come. I'm sure it'll get good enough. But at the moment, what we're seeing is it does require that interaction. It's not just machine. It's a skilled engineer augmented with what they can then do, like a force multiplier, checking that it is actually doing what they think it is, and effectively sense checking it and going from there.
Yeah, there does seem to be this level of mastery required, and there's sort of mastery when you're using it to augment what you do, and then there's a additional mastery when you're delving into things like agentic approaches and things like that.
And going back to your question, so if you're not letting your employees do that, I think you're handicapping them and yourselves, and this is only going to get better. So if you've got employees like, for example, our journey from Copilot to Cursor, they're evolving and they're looking and they're involved, that in itself is another force multiplier inside a force multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
I, as an individual, can look so much and go, that's an interesting tool, I'll experiment with it. But as a team, obviously, you've got that leverage, you've got more eyes, you've got more people on it. And being Cursor, I think, is a good example of that.
Tell us a bit about when the pilot was being run. What was the effect on the other team members who were not directly involved in the pilot?
That's a great question. So some of them wanted to be, and I'd already decided if they asked or made a case, I would let them do it and go with it. But Copilot at the time and VS Code and WebStorm were working brilliantly. So people were not hesitant to want to change, but they were contented enough to watch and learn from the others. And I said, bring back what you're finding. So Matt was brilliant in coming back and telling people, you need to be using this. So as he was doing that, I was then preparing our CFO for, we might have another subscription coming for a SaaS provider, but it's a good one.
And where do you think this will go? What does the future hold for you folks in terms of where are the other opportunities? I mean, you mentioned the agentic AI. Is that something like, have you got some specific areas you're thinking about there of introducing it with?
It's an interesting one. I think that's inevitably where it's going to go. I would just say it's not quite there yet. I'd say it's a credit to Matt as much as it is to Claude that he managed to get that migration done. And the other product we built that's 30% human effort and 70% is only because it's greenfield. I don't think we're at a point where we can say, okay, here's a code base, go and add this feature, or here's a code base, refactor this or that. I think it is very much a case of that's going to come, but how soon, I don't know. So what we're doing is effectively using all the tools we can. So we're now using Claude 4, we're using Gemini 2.5. We're just constantly keeping that look on the horizon of what's coming, what can we use and what can we do. Claude Code looks incredibly interesting, and that's something we were dabbling with. But again, it's a bit too abstract from what we're trying to do and achieve. Whereas the way that Cursor works, it's just there is your code, work together hand in hand. That augmentation I was talking about earlier, that seems to be where the money is at the moment, or the productivity boost, or the winners.
And can you share any patterns the team is discovering as they're getting more familiar with these tools?
Interesting. Not really. It's more about them getting used to using it like an AI kind of assistant. So it's more of a personal kind of thing. So we've obviously set up rules for our code base and rules for our coding standards and for doing that, and expectations what we want out of the code base. So we kind of got those done, but it's more this is more like the skill I was saying around the personalization of using these tools. Is if you're using it day in, day out, you become augmented with it, you can write great code with it, and again, the more effective that is. So I think that's more the pattern in itself, rather than there's a generic one size fits all. And I think that's also interesting that an experienced programmer can probably get more out of it for that reason, because they can put more in and they can sense what right and wrong is, more so than the AI tool is doing that, if that makes sense at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting that so some of people's hesitance with these tools is that it disrupts their workflow. So you're sort of relearning a workflow, but that's also where some of the power is the more that you reshape your workflow with these tools, the more you can get the benefits from it.
Yeah, and even inside your workflow. So the PHP 8 and the large percentage of code that Cursor wrote in that with accepting tabs, the general flow doesn't have to be that way. Like, one of the things I've been saying to more junior employees is that you can use this to ask it questions. You can use it like a senior to pair with, and you can rubber duck and you can do that kind of work that way. You don't have to ask it to write all the code for you. You can ask it to explain stuff, or you can start typing in autocomplete. You can still fall back to the way that Copilot worked originally, which was still a productivity booster. And you don't have to use it. So if you really, really don't want to use it because you want to write something, or you just feel that so inclined, you can, you can just write. You can do code without it.
Mm-hmm.
What about sharing? I mean, as Matt was learning, was he able to share? Obviously, sharing the stories about what's happening and how he's progressing and what's working, what isn't. Was he able to share prompts or any kind of artifacts with the rest of the team so they could start to use those sort of things as well?
Not so much. He more just shared his excitement. And his excitement then led to the rollout of the tool, and then people started experimenting and working their own way. So it's not, the way Cursor works isn't so much prompt based, and not so much like ChatGPT, for example. It's more, again, it's that more that augmentation. So it's more working alongside you in your code base. So a lot of the context comes from what you're working on and what you're working in, more so than prompt.
It's an interesting takeaway, and I've been finding this with a number of my clients that have been asking for help on adoption of these tools. And so I normally recommend similar approach to you've taken, which is start with a pilot, and it's the social proof that comes with the pilot that can help different people at different positions along the adoption cycle.
Absolutely. And Matt's credibility with the team, being the principal engineer and being him so excited about it, and then the success of the project that followed on as well, that's all made people buy into it. That's the hype that people are then buying into as well. I think if I'd said, hey, everybody, we're using Cursor now, and tried to say, no, you've got to use Cursor, you've got to use Cursor, that wouldn't have worked. But they were very excited to work with Matt and to hear how Matt was getting on, and then adopt it there too.
So that's a real alternative, because there's been a lot of press and hype around AI mandates. And, there was a few very public ones. And then, I saw quite a number of CTOs follow suit and issue their own AI mandates. But I think there's a real cost to those. So it might feel like it works in the short term, but it does so at a cost of trust and agency of the team.
I did a really great article where someone had renamed themselves from CTO to CAIO and changed DevOps to AIOps because their CEO wasn't convinced they were using enough AI. So therefore they went around changing all the terms of the team to include AI. So every single update included AI, regardless of whether the update was actually about that or not. I thought that was quite a good one.
Oh, they earned their salary then. Nice.
Yeah, definitely. That's another way of doing it.
Yeah, there's certainly enough hype in the market, isn't there? In terms of, I think that's what we're trying to be very careful about. It's like, let's pick the story, let's talk to people who are actually using this and our own experience with what's actually working, and try and pick a path through the hype. And because I think there are enough enough stories like this where people are genuinely finding this really, really powerful, and it's also evolving very quickly, which makes it kind of fascinating from a process and technology perspective. But it's also does have clear limitations. Well, are there any things where you would say, hey, be careful about this, or these are sort of gotchas around this?
I wouldn't want it writing aircraft software or helicopter software in any way, shape, or form. But I think just use it is the main thing, and experiment with it, and just be aware that it's not perfect and it is flawed and it does hallucinate. And the other thing, so I come back to the point a minute ago, is it's very much a team effort. Like, I, as an individual, I'm responsible for the technology, but I can't know how every model is going to perform in our scenario and our code base. So encouraging that teamwork and people experimenting using Gemini Pro 2.5 versus Claude 3.7, and what does Claude 4 bring us, and encouraging those kind of discussions. I think that breeds a lot of the kind of trusting of the process, or discovery of what is a risk or what isn't a risk. It's very much a team effort. If you try to do it on your own, I think you're really gonna struggle, because you are going to walk into traps and pitfalls and dangers.
Yeah.
I also think sticking to the main models is probably quite a good route for security. And like, for example, I haven't used DeepSeek much at all. I played with it in my own time, but I've just kind of shied away from that.
Yeah,
that's more gut feel than anything else.
Yes. Yeah, data sovereignty issues there potentially for some folks. And what about, so just in terms of the security side of things, how did you become comfortable with that? I mean, what research did you do and what did you learn?
To start with Copilot, I quickly realized that it's just looking at every single thing that's on GitHub anyway. So our code would be a drop in the ocean. If you really wanted to recreate the entire of our tech stack, you could probably do it by prompting it all the way through Copilot before it saw any of our code. So I kind of got comfortable with that. And then also comfortable with the fact, a lot of our IP is how our developers operate, how we host it. Around that, there's a lot of value. So the code is slightly less valuable, and therefore I kind of was more comfortable with the fact we would be sharing it. And then as soon as I saw what we were getting back, and the productivity boost, the morale boost, the excitement, it became an obvious win to take that risk. And I think that's unfortunately where like an enterprise would struggle, where you potentially can't afford to take that risk because you've got legal or contractual reasons why you can't share that information. But as CTO, I'm very comfortable with that decision for our startup, and the benefits far outweigh the cons.
Yeah. And now we are seeing some alternatives, small language models, that type of thing. Is there anything that you sort of came across in your research that you considered outside of the large language models?
No, because they're just too good, and they're too quick to evolve. I think if you go down an avenue, you're going to get left behind. I'm more worried about that than I am about any of the other things, to be truthful. Obviously, I keep abreast of all the news and all the things that are going on and negative things that do come up. I try and steer us around, but so far, to be perfectly honest, it's been fantastic. OpenAI and Anthropic are just leading the way, and then Google, I think, has just trumped them all again. So it's great having those big names that are in public. Again, it's useful.
That's fascinating to see, isn't it? The new model comes out and that's sort of slightly ahead in the benchmarks, and then the next one comes out and that's just, they're all very, very close. It's just a case of timing with the models often, isn't it?
Very much so. And people have their favorites as well. So I'm let people do that, and then let them have the discussion. It's fascinating to think that 3 or 4 years ago this was not a thing, and now it's a hotly debated topic in our team. Is Gemini 2.5 better? Well, I'm going to do this. Well, are you going to use Claude 3.7 or are you going to use Gemini 2.5?
Any insights on why people prefer models? It seems to be, I think it's a very human thing to prefer a model rather than a particular kind of rational reason. But any insights from you?
I think it's quite an emotive thing. I think it is a case of that you're working alongside it. So it's almost like it is your, it's augmenting you. It's part of your profession. It's part of your being, essentially, as silly as that sounds saying it out loud. But as an example, I'll use ChatGPT for most of my professional work and writing to remove Olyglish. If I want to review something or rate myself, I'll use Grok, because generally it's quite unceremonious and quite cutting in its remarks. So I quite enjoy the roasting that Grok will give me if I give it a piece of text I've written or something. So I'll use ChatGPT to refine it, gather my thoughts, do it, and then I'll ask Grok for a summary of, does this meet the objective I set out to do? And Grok will scathingly tell me no, because you haven't done this, or yes, maybe. It's fascinating to see the different ways the companies are going, and it's great having that choice as well. The fact it's not a one-horse race is brilliant for us consumers.
We're ending up with model connoisseurs. No, it's interesting. It's not always the model that is at the top of the benchmarks that seems to do the best for software development as well. So I think Claude 3.7 is a great example, particularly when it's wrapped with Claude code. So it is interesting to watch these patterns.
Claude 3.7 really was the game changer. I think that's what made Matt aware that this was going to be possible to do PHP 8. He's going to kill me now, because I partly think he might have done it in Gemini 2.5 Pro, but I'm now having a mental block. But I will credit Claude 3.7 as being the game changer. It's when it went from 3.7 that Cursor went literally in leagues ahead of whatever we could do with Copilot. And it's at that point that we're like, yes, this is going to massively boost the team. And I'd say we probably went from 20% of our code written by AI to 30% just in that one move.
And even if the tools didn't change after today, I feel like it's already transformed the software industry. Like if everything froze in its tracks, I feel like the tools have already had that impact.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think it's the skills are getting developed. These are foundational skills now. So I think universities will need to be picking up on this. Like, it's not just about how you code a computer. It's about how you code a computer and get the best out of AI. It's about how you work with it, how it augments your day to day.
Mm.
And for someone that is dyslexic and can take an hour to write an email, it's an absolute godsend from that perspective as well. And we're seeing it used across the company as well, because our success we've always shared back with the business, and then the business has been using Gen AI for things like marketing. So we had our one of our marketers show us how they edit and amend photos and do infill, and actually got some video moving from a photo and all sorts of other stuff that appear on our Instagram. So we get some high profile cars. If it's not quite perfect for Instagram, they're now just capable of tweaking it with some prompts. And a lot of our Instagram is AI augmented.
I was wondering, Olly, so you mentioned a few people that you collaborate with or are answerable to. You mentioned the CFO. Who else did you have to engage with to get decisions around AI-assisted development?
That was it, really. I'm empowered with a certain amount of budget, so that was a bit tongue-in-cheek with the CFO. So I did push that through and then say I've approved this myself. But said that, one of my objectives I set myself for this year was to get the whole senior leadership team using ChatGPT and Gemini Pro, so they had at least some form of experience. Because again, if they're not starting on that journey, they're going to get left behind. So I've been quite militant on pushing the agenda of AI and saying, why are you using it? And the whole entire exec team is now using it in various different ways, which is ace to see. And then that also gets the support for the buy-in, so they're not questioning why. And the board isn't questioning why either, because they see the metric as 30% of code. So they've quickly done the maths to realize $40 a month subscription per user for Cursor is probably one of the greatest leverages they've got.
And you mentioned being left behind. Is that is the driver more competition or more their skills in the industry? How are you thinking about it?
Both, to be perfectly honest. I think it's going to be quite a defining thing. There's a fantastic quote that I read the other day about Ayrton Senna saying he couldn't overtake 18 drivers on one lap in the dry, but if it's raining, he could. And I think that's the kind of difference between AI and not AI. I think it really is that much of a game changer. I mean, you take I was joking slightly, but my 5 minutes to jot an email down roughly, and then my 55 minutes to polish it, especially if it's a serious email, that is a significant time saving. Even if I spend 5 minutes fiddling around with ChatGPT, I'm 50 minutes up. You apply that across the whole business, you apply that across legal, marketing, finance, it really does start to stack up. And again, it's that relationship with it. It's not, there isn't one prompt I can give you. It's that experience of knowing that developing of threads, that giving it the right context, that knowing that actually Gemini 2.5 Pro is better for doing that image generation than this is, or quickly being able to spin the two in comparison and picking between them. It's an incredibly rich world and landscape. And the more skills you have, the more you can leverage it.
Amazing. So maybe we can run through a quick wrap up, and then we'll check in with where people can find you, Olly. So I took a few notes along the way, and chip in, Gareth, if you've got a few as well. So you highlighted the importance of experience, Olly. So Matt was your principal developer, and so the more experience as a software engineer, that led into more leverage with him using the AI assisted development tools. You also called out there was existing knowledge about the code base and layered testing and a well-factored code base that was present. You started off with Copilot and had some, aha moments with that before the team started asking about Cursor, and then so you ran a pilot and had the team sort of sharing back their really just their enthusiasm, which sounds like it was infectious. The team, in terms of practices, are using Cursor rules and making sure that they're pointing the relevant parts of the code base to the tools. And there was a new version of the product produced almost as a proof of concept of the power of the tools. And then you also highlighted the change of the workflow. So there was a key theme around the impact that these tools had on the workflow. And you said there was just lots of different ways to use it. So whether you're using it to produce code or engage and ask questions about the architecture, or even knowing when to choose not to use the tools. So those were some of the key takeaways. Gareth, any highlights for you?
That's pretty good coverage. I think also just the message in terms of, just the length of time that the team had been involved in playing with the stuff, building confidence, and then you're just increasing the sort of trust through learning in these tools and getting more and more benefits out of it, which is pretty interesting, and certainly something that we're experiencing as well.
And you also highlighted the risk profile of the business. Helped. So you considered the risk profile, and that informed your decision making around the adoption of the tools. Well, that has been an absolutely fascinating chat, Olly. So thankful for you sharing the team story. And I think it could be inspiring for others, because we know so many companies in our neck of the woods find themselves with these challenges, whether it's a PHP 7.3 to 8, or an Angular to React migration, or many others.
Yeah, I think the promise is huge, isn't it? In terms of when we look at the amount of technical debt in the industry globally, and now we're starting to have some tools where we can really tackle these in a way that economically makes sense. So it's pretty cool, Olly. Thank you.
If people wanted to reach out to you, Olly, where could they find you?
Probably best is iOlly on Twitter, or Olly Brand on LinkedIn.
Great.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Olly.
That's great. Thanks both. Have a good day. Speak soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Olly. And if you've got a similar sort of challenge and you want to talk to some people with some expertise, both in legacy migration and AI software development tools, then you can reach out to Hyper. How do they find Hyper, Gareth?
So best thing to do is drop us an email, or you can contact me directly on LinkedIn, and please come and have a look at our website and our thoughts as well.
Excellent.